So what happens when a protest during a Sunday church service ends up triggering a full-blown response from the FBI and Homeland Security? Well, that's the tangled web we're getting into in today's Explainer.
It all kicks off on what was supposed to be a totally normal Sunday morning. A worship service at City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota is suddenly and very dramatically thrown into chaos.
Now, this wasn't treated like some minor disturbance. Oh no. The response was fast and it was federal. We're talking the FBI and Homeland Security investigations stepping in, leading to some really high-profile arrests.
And that really gets to the heart of what we're exploring here. How does a protest, which is supposed to be a fundamental right, cross this invisible line and suddenly become a federal case?
To really wrap our heads around how we got here, we're actually going to do things a little backward. We're going to start at the end of the story with that big federal crackdown and the government's official response.
Right away, the U.S. Attorney General framed this as a matter of religious liberty. The administration statement made it clear. They saw these arrests not just as basic law enforcement, but as a defense of a core American value.
And you know, the people they arrested? These weren't just random faces in the crowd. We're talking about really prominent local figures. A well-known civil rights attorney, a school board member, and a popular online agitator. This tells you the government was trying to send a very clear message.
And the charges themselves, they were serious. Instead of something like local trespassing, the government brought out the heavy hitters, federal statutes. They used the FACE Act and a conspiracy charge for depriving people of their rights. That instantly took this from a local protest to a major federal case.
So, what in the world happened inside that church to set off such a massive response? All right, let's rewind the tape and go back to the day of the confrontation itself. So we're not talking about just one or two people here. A whole group, somewhere between 30 and 40 protesters, actually walked right into the sanctuary while the service was going on.
According to reports, they marched, they started chanting slogans about ICE and a recent police shooting of a woman named Renee Good, and they got into these direct, pretty heated arguments with the people who were there to worship. The whole scene was described as chaotic and, especially scary for the kids who were there.
The church's lead pastor, Jonathan Parnell, he did not mince words. He called what the protesters did shameful and intimidating, really focusing on how a sacred space was violated and the impact that had on the families inside.
Okay, so why this church? Why here? Well, as it turns out, this was no random target, not at all. And here's the twist, the absolute center of the conflict. One of the pastors at the church, a man named David Easterwood, was also the acting field office director for ICE in that region. For the activists, these two jobs, pastor and top ICE official, were completely at odds. So this is so important to understand. This protest didn't just happen in a vacuum. Tensions in the city were already incredibly high after an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good. Plus, an aggressive immigration campaign called Operation Metro Surge had just started. The church protest was things boiling over, and the federal arrests were the government's answer.
And just when you think it can't get more complex, it does. One of the arrested activists, Nakima Levy-Armstrong, is a Christian preacher herself. Her argument was that the protest wasn't anti-Christian at all. In fact, she said it was based on Christian principles, claiming that what ICE was doing went against the teachings of the gospel.
As you can imagine, the second the news of these federal arrests broke, it set off an absolute firestorm online and in the media, splitting public reaction right down the middle. On one side, you had a lot of conservative commentators and officials who were cheering on the move. Posts just like this one summed up a feeling that law and order had to be restored, that these protesters had gone way too far and deserved a strong government response.
But on the other side, the reaction was just pure outrage. For many people, seeing federal charges used against activists like this was a terrifying sign of government overreach. Some even called it a step towards fascism.
You could even see this deep divide in how the news was reported. The Fox News headline used words like agitator and invasion. CBS News, however, made a point to include the context that the church was led by an ICE official. I mean, it's the exact same event, but two totally different stories.
So why are we talking so much about this one case in Minnesota? Why does it matter so much? Well, it all comes down to the specific law they used and the precedent it could set for everyone.
The whole legal case really hinges on this one piece of legislation called the FACE Act. So what exactly is it?
Right, so the FACE Act is probably most famous for being used to protect access to reproductive health clinics from protesters, but, and this is the key part, it also includes protections for places of worship. Using this law, which is so tied up in the politics of abortion, against these particular activists, well, that's what makes this case so incredibly significant and controversial.
And all of this leaves us with one massive, crucial question. This case is forcing a national conversation about where we, as a country, draw the line. When does activism cross over into obstruction? When does a demonstration become a federal conspiracy? The answer, whatever it is going to shape the future of protest in America.
This whole explainer was built on the incredible detailed reporting of the Shasta Beacon. If you want to dive deeper into their coverage, you can find them at shastabeacon.com.